From the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello, and thank you for listening. Weekdays, 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. You're going to think that what I'm about to say is unusual for somebody who is a broadcaster. This show is actually an open letter to an audience of one, and it would be former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Although I would also add that there are others in the periphery throughout the Georgia Democratic Party who should take some notes and maybe join in on the movement that I think has to happen, what needs to become a part of her gubernatorial campaign platform, and fast. Once again, Atlanta is going to be hosting the world. Well, a large chunk of the world anyway, with the FIFA World Cup coming up in a matter of weeks. Yeah, panic. I mean, you've got company coming to the house and the house isn't clean. What do, right? You gather all the troops. You get the kids involved. You're cleaning that place up. You are making sure that the gutters are clean, that the bedrooms are clean, the linens are clean. Everything is shipped to stern, clean and functional. Everything works, right? I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, outside Augusta, Georgia, I should say, where every year we'd have tens of thousands of people descend on the city to stay in the city. Augusta's not a huge city. It doesn't have hotel rooms aplenty, especially high-end hotel rooms aplenty, for the patrons that would come for 1 week out of the year to stay in and around Augusta, Georgia, to go to the Masters Golf Tournament. Now, you can imagine people that go to the Masters Golf Tournament, it's golf. They're usually a little more affluent. They don't want to stay in the, no offense, Motel 6 off of Washington Road and I-20. It's just not really what they're accustomed to. It's they would be slumming it. And again, no offense to Motel 6. It's got a purpose for minutes or hours or overnight, if that's what you choose to use it for. Again, no offense to Motel 6. But Augusta, Georgia's residents had long made it to their benefit to be hospitable by offering up their homes for a week to people to come stay in accommodations that are more befitting the type of person that goes to golf tournaments. Hoity-toity people. They want to stay in nice places. They want to feel at home while they're away from home. So Augusta, before Vrbo and Airbnb, had already set up a scenario where if you wanted to lease your home out for the week, and by the way, you could make 2 to 3 times what your monthly rent was for that 1 week if you did it right. I mean, it was lucrative stuff. You would sign yourself up, sign your home up through the city of Augusta, and the city of Augusta would help those Masters patrons find a suitable place for them to stay. And now, Airbnb and Vrbo have made that a moot point or whatever. But still, we in Augusta got used to the idea that we had company coming. We had the world coming to our doorstep annually. And we had to make sure that everything was in place. And so homes were, meticulously cleaned. You would go and buy new linens. Because you don't want to sleep in the linens that strangers stayed in, right? You would go and buy nice new high-end linens. You would have the best mattresses. You would have your home, just showroom, Southern living photo spread ready for folks coming to stay with you. Now, Augusta, by the way, again, not a major city, doesn't have mass transit. And honestly, golf patrons probably wouldn't take it anyway. They're going to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on their luxury SUV. So naturally, they want to drive it straight up to the golf course. And by the way, the Augusta National Golf Course is surrounded now by property that the golf course owns just for people to park on it. Just for that 1 week out of the year. It's a huge waste of space, but I digress. So transit isn't necessarily a top mind priority for either the city of Augusta, although it should be, or the folks that live in and around Augusta who are accommodating the folks that come to stay there. Again, I say all this to say Atlanta doesn't have an accommodation problem. All right, we've got more than enough hotel rooms. And of course, there are people who have dipped into the Airbnb and Vrbo business in and around Atlanta as well to accommodate something like the FIFA World Cup. Or, again, famously, the 1996 Olympic Games. And I would argue that Atlanta could and should one day talk about entertaining a bid to again host the Olympic Games, because we've got the facilities. What we don't have is the mobilities. Yeah. And this is why I'm speaking specifically to former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who should intimately know as well as anyone that that is a glaring problem, not just for her former city, but for the metro region, North Georgia, and honestly, the state of Georgia as well. And I know it's not sexy to talk about Atlanta mass transit when you live in Cordele, or you live in Vidalia, or you live outside of Albany, or you live in Rockmart, or you live in, where am I going? Waycross. But here's the thing. Metro Atlanta is actually an Achilles heel for the former Atlanta mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, electorally. We saw that in the primary. We saw where Fulton and DeKalb County were the two counties that she kind of lagged when it came to turnout and support for. It's not that she didn't win those counties. She just didn't obliterate her opponents in those counties the way she did in the Democratic primary throughout the rest of the state. And to me, that is a sign of weakness that she can address by addressing mobility issues in and around Metro Atlanta. Now, it's too late. Honestly, it is. It's too late to do anything about mobility for the FIFA World Cup. Atlanta has had opportunities time and time again. Again, we hosted the 1996 Olympic Games. I'm going to make you feel really old here. It was 30 years ago. Oh, yeah. You feel that in your lower back too? I do as well. We have had 30 years to learn from the lessons taught to us by the world and by that experience to build on it. And I think about Ryan Gravel. He, in Atlanta circles, is somewhat famous as the Georgia Tech student who crafted the Atlanta Beltline as part of a school project. Just an idea that someone saw and says, oh my God, this is brilliant. This patchwork of old rail lines that you pull up the rail, the next thing you know, you have walkability connecting neighborhoods, a big loop throughout the inner parts of Atlanta that have pedestrian and green space, and the rail element that connects the inside of the city to each other. Brilliant stuff. Ryan Gravel came up with a great idea, and he's seen it implemented all but the rail part. It is a political lightning rod in the city of Atlanta right now that we do not have rail on the Beltline. And the funny thing is, this isn't like a Democratic v. Republican issue. This is, this is an in-city thing. So most of the folks who weigh in tend to vote for Democrats anyway. It's kind of a liberal v. moderate, I guess you could say, progressive v. liberal. And honestly, I hear from people all the time who I'm like, oh, I thought you were more progressive than that. Oh, I'm surprised that you're not for Beltline. Like, it's surprising when I hear from people about Beltline rail who weigh in against it. And maybe for Keisha Lance Bottoms, the former mayor of Atlanta, current Democratic gubernatorial nominee and candidate, maybe it's not popular for her to come to her former city and say, we're going to do this. Just to put the fist on it, we're going to do this. This has to happen. But it's not like she doesn't have experience doing something like that before. There were those, obviously, myself among them, who were opposed to the Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility, a.k.a. Cop City. That is a bone of contention, something that she is going to have an issue with grassroots, motivated, door-knocking type constituents. She's going to have that little issue. I said this during the primary. I said this to her. I said this to Mike Thurman, the former DeKalb CEO, who was CEO of DeKalb County when the Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility was being built in DeKalb County, but not within Atlanta city limits. I mean, he had some opportunity to weigh in on that and opted not to. But the damn thing was built. Despite local and overwhelming opposition, the damn thing was built. I mean, there's no arguing about it now. I still think it was a lot, way too expensive, way too big, not in the city limits. When Fulton County wanted to build a facility as well, and why didn't the city and the county collaborate on that in city limits to make sure that that was built at a lower cost and not in an area that was environmentally and ecologically important to those that it was environmentally and ecologically important to? But regionally speaking, if something isn't done and somebody doesn't decide very soon that something needs to be done about regional mobility, both in the city of Atlanta and throughout Metro Atlanta, if we don't have somebody with that vision that says, I can't be worried about how this polls, it has to be done, then we're not going to be able to host future World Cups or even have a conversation about hosting Olympic Games. Because getting around in Atlanta has gotten increasingly difficult. Getting around Metro Atlanta is getting increasingly difficult. And I don't care how many flyways or interchange expansions the Georgia Department of Transportation does. I don't care about how many additional lanes we get on 400 or, we're going to get a bus rapid lane on 400. We have learned over time additional lanes do not solve Atlanta's traffic problems. And while I like the idea of Atlanta being more bike friendly, I think taking lanes in the city streets away for a bike lane is not smart. Midtown on busy weekends, it's a mess. I live in it. It's a mess. It's hard. It's just to go 3 blocks to get on the downtown connector, I-85, I-75, can take 20 minutes to go 3 blocks. That's not good. Dear God, when I moved here in 2018, I remember the feeling, the stunned audacity of sitting at a busy intersection in the middle of Midtown Atlanta and watching as people in suits with briefcases in one hand and bike helmets on their head were riding these e-scooters in the streets. I said to myself, what the is this? I had no idea that this was a thing, that Atlanta had been overtaken by bird scooters or whatever they're calling it. Uber. There are all these the Lime scooters. Their scooters are everywhere. You see them parked along the people just leave them, and that's what you're supposed to do when your time is up. You know, you've got a nap, and when your time is up, you just leave the scooter where you're done with it. But people are driving in the streets on it because it gives them the opportunity to go, I don't know, a handful of blocks in a short amount of time, if they can find a bird scooter or an e-scooter, whatever it is, and not have to go to the parking deck, get in the car, pay the $20 or more to have parked there, get out, sit in traffic, just to meander a few blocks to go to another parking deck and pay an exorbitant sum to park there and maybe get to that destination on time. That's your sign, Atlanta. It's hard to get around in your city, and people are taking to risking life and limb, honestly. These things are street legal, I guess. Well, you don't want them on the sidewalk, and you don't have enough of those little bike lanes for folks to traverse on them. So, yeah, they're street legal. I literally sat at a light on Peachtree, downtown, Midtown Atlanta, Peachtree Street, and this woman, she knows she's got the right to be there. She's not just along the far extent of the lane. She's smack dab in the middle of it at a red light, like she belonged there, because technically she does. You know what she wasn't wearing? A helmet, any padding, anything like that. She was just in, like, you know, a little pair of shorts and a little tank top and her little shoes and just all out there on a scooter in the middle of traffic. People are resorting to what to me is a far more dangerous way of getting around Atlanta, because it's hard to get around Atlanta in a vehicle. And a city the size of Atlanta should have better options. We should have surface level streetcars running down the median of the street. We should have a better mass transit grid than we do. We should have Beltline rail. And we don't have any of those things that are viable or useful. And it pains me to say this because I'm a mass transit fan. MARTA is a PR mess right now, and they're not helping the cause in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to provide a little bit of evidence of that. And then we're going to talk about the dueling conversation about the Beltline rail problem. And then, Mayor Bottoms, because this is a show for an audience of one, I'm going to implore you to act on it when you become governor. I know it's a little early, but let's get in the hot tub time machine. Let's go back 6 years into time. Back then, Atlanta TV station WANF, Atlanta News First was CBS 46. So from CBS 46, 6 years ago.
Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms returned to the state legislature for a second day, reaffirming her desire for a good working relationship with state lawmakers, some of whom are pushing for a state takeover of the Atlanta airport. Bottoms made it clear she's opposed.
My position has not changed since last year. I don't think that we should tamper with the world's best airport. I think that any interruption in that airport in terms of leadership and oversight will be disruptive for the operations of the airport, but also for the people who use the airport.
The Atlanta City Council staunchly opposed any form of a takeover as Senator Burt Jones pushed a bill to take the reins, citing corruption and questionable contract bids.
Now, ain't that some after we learned about the whole Daniel Dooley, Derek Dooley, Brian Kemp, school security, grant funding, slush money funnel, right? But still, there's something to learn from your opposition here.
What we've had are some problems that don't have anything to do with how the airport is operated. And what we've done with the Inspector General will give us even more oversight over procurement and the processes that we've heard concerns about coming from our leaders at the state.
Hear me out. I believe there needs to be a state takeover of MARTA for a variety of reasons. Reason number one, WAGA Fox 5 Atlanta.
But we begin in southwest Atlanta. A woman is dead, stabbed to death while riding a MARTA train. Good evening. I'm Christopher King in for Eric Perry. Police say the crime happened this afternoon at the Oakland City MARTA station.
I'm a residential realtor. I was just showing a prospective buyer a house blocks from the Oakland City MARTA station. He's never lived in a major city. His family lives outside of Greenville, South Carolina. They need to feel safe when they come to visit, and that doesn't help. Reason number two for a state takeover of MARTA. And this is just recent news, y'all. From WXIA-TV, 11 Alive Atlanta.
We have some breaking news for you here. Some new MARTA trains, they're known as the CQ400 model. They were set to debut and start going into service this week, specifically on June 4th.
Right.
But just a little bit ago, MARTA, in a press release, announced that debut has now been canceled.
You have the more MARTA funding kerfuffle. That is a black eye, a PR disaster for MARTA, where a local option sales tax was bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars for rail projects. People voted for this stuff. It was that popular. People were like, yes, we need more MARTA rail. We need not a bus lane to Southwest Atlanta. Not a bus lane up for. We need rail. People voted for it. Instead, they're getting, well, there's the BRT lane that takes you to the old Brave Stadium that Georgia State University is now Frankensteining into this football eyesore, frankly. But still, you got that. And it's something. It's not nothing, but it ain't rail. Speaking of the Oakland rail station, there was supposed to be like a Campbellton corridor. We were going to get an extension, and we're going to get some additional bus lanes. And they just rejiggered the whole bus situation, too. We're just now, by the way, getting to the point where ridership of MARTA's trains is approaching pre-pandemic levels. It may have something to do with the fact that it's been free for so long because they are working on the new kiosks. They essentially are finally joining the 21st century when it comes to being able to use your phone to tap and hop on, and the glass partitions that slide open and slide shut. They're having to go to thicker glass now because some of those have already shattered. MARTA is a fucking mess, and somebody with some clout has to step in and do something about that before we lose the plot. It's not that MARTA being a mess is an indictment on the idea of the necessity of mass transit. It's more an indictment on just the mess that MARTA is. And listen, I don't mean to just pick on the people who are on the board or people who work for MARTA. I get it. When you are poor, you don't have the same margin for error. And MARTA is poor. MARTA has had to carry an extraordinary burdensome load without the funding necessary, which is why I believe there needs to be a state takeover of MARTA. Conservatives have had this healthy appetite for wanting to take over the Atlanta airport, right? Because it's so vital, it's so important to the economic health of the state that they, 6 years ago, thought, well, there's all this corruption, blah, blah, blah. We've got to take over the Atlanta airport so that it functions more smoothly because the economy of the state relies on it. I hate to break it to you, conservative Republicans, but the state's economy relies on Atlanta being a city worth living in that is easy to get around in and for people to come visit, to have ease to get around in as well. And oddly enough, I think if the former Atlanta mayor, current Democratic gubernatorial candidate Keisha Lance Bottoms were to say the state needs to take over MARTA, I actually think she wins people over outside city limits because there are a lot of folks who are just anti-MARTA. I mean, they're anti-mass transit in general, but MARTA's not going away. It just needs to be improved. And that's why she needs to call for a state takeover of MARTA. More on that when the Ron Show returns on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
Show.
Heard weekdays on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. I know this is a very Atlanta-centric conversation I'm having, but it's, I believe, important for the economy of the entire state of Georgia. And also, might I add, there is a regional component to this that stretches outside Metro Atlanta confines as well. To the south of us, the state of Florida has a public-private partnership called Brightline that is connecting the entire state by rail. And it's, by the way, being dogged by folks who are hand-wringing about its fiscal viability, et cetera, and so on. There's this short-term vision issue that I think we have when it comes to human mobility, rail transit, mass transit. Amtrak's not a profitable venture. It's sort of dealing with the same problems that I think MARTA is dealing with, that Brightline deals with, and that we've never had the appetite for the sort of mobility that Americans actually need and that the 21st century has long called for because we're in love with the open road and autonomous vehicles so we can choose our own music and blah, 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 blah. We've been marketed to an extreme. You can't watch anything on television, any major sporting event without, competing car ads. The movie industry has glamorized road trips. How many train trips are glamorized by TV shows or movies? Very few. And I get it. It's not easy to do in these United States because we didn't really stick to the script when we had rail transit as a primary mode of transportation. We fell in love with flying as well. No disrespect to the Wright brothers. Great job. But we did. We fell in love with flying. Flying sucks. In these United States, flying absolutely sucks. It's a beating. You have to get to the airport a million hours early. You have to take your shoes off, deal with TSA, X-ray, wand, body thing. And then you sit there and you wait for 2 hours, 3 hours in uncomfortable chairs. You can't recline in those chairs. Then you get packed on the plane because the plane has to maximize its profit. And unless you're paying exorbitant amounts to get the little human cubicles at the front of the plane, it's just a beating. And what's really dumb is this to me is the dumbest part. Again, I lived in Augusta, Georgia. When I didn't live in Augusta, Georgia, but my family still did, I would come home to see them very often from places that I worked in radio from, like Shreveport, Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, Mobile, Alabama. Very rarely, actually, would I fly from Mobile to Augusta. And the drive from Mobile to Atlanta, I want to say is 4 hours. Yeah, 3.5, 4 hours, something like that. Or maybe it was the whole trip from Mobile to Augusta. It's about 4 hours. Flying from Mobile to Atlanta kind of doesn't make much sense. But, what are you going to do? Flying from Augusta to Atlanta, or Atlanta to Augusta, as part of the leg of flying from Mobile to Atlanta to Augusta, or New Orleans to Atlanta to Augusta, or Shreveport to Atlanta. Oh my God, what a beating that was! Oh my God, the fly. No disrespect to Delta, but you're in the air just long enough to be in the air and back down. And it's even like you feel like you've just taken off when you're landing, going from Atlanta to Augusta. It's insipid that we do these flights. To me, in my mind, if someone were to extend an olive branch to Delta, I don't know, say a new governor of a party that hasn't held that office for decades, were to say, Delta, you know what? Let's have a conversation, just an exploratory conversation about a public-private partnership where we help you get out of the loss leader puddle jumper game, but you have a stake still in the transport of humans from those external cities that you have a footprint at their airports, but don't have to continue losing money on the whims of the fossil fuel industry, which right now is just eating us all in the shorts, right? Hey, not for nothing, but there's actually precedent for this. Air Canada, the airline, were part of a winning high-speed rail bid for a new corridor that was going to connect a lot of cities, not unlike Chattanooga, Macon, Albany, Savannah, Augusta, Columbus, these cities that have their airports. Why, I don't know, but they do. Anyway, the Canadian versions of cities like Augusta, Macon, Columbus, Savannah, that all encircle Toronto, are now going to be connected to Toronto's international airport by high-speed rail that the airline Air Canada is financially invested in. And at first you would say, well, why would Air Canada want to provide an option other than flying to get to the Toronto airport when they could just fly people from those smaller cities? Because it costs Air Canada too much money to fly, to take 40 to 60 people, if that, once or twice a day from Columbus to the Atlanta airport to then connect them to another flight. And honestly, it's cost prohibitive for the individual to do that flying right now anyway. A round-trip flight, 3-hour drive from Atlanta to Charlotte. A round-trip flight right now from Atlanta to Charlotte is about $700. We have been kicking around the idea of high-speed rail connecting those two major Southeast U.S. cities for decades now. Where is it? Why don't we have it? It makes no sense that we don't already have this. You can, by the way, take Amtrak from New Orleans to Atlanta. That's about a 7-hour drive. It's about a 13-hour train ride. You can take Amtrak from Atlanta to Charlotte. It's about a 3-hour drive. It's about a 7-hour train ride. It's the 21st century. You would think that, you don't have to deal with red lights or stops for gas or anything like that. You're on the rail. You should be. No, see, Amtrak doesn't own the rail lines that they use in a lot of the country outside of the Northeast Corridor, where, by the way, it's very popular because they actually have somewhat high-speed rail, and they don't have to pull off to the side when CSX or Norfolk Southern needs to move some goods or services down the rail line. See, they get priority, and Amtrak has to literally get off to the side. They have side rails that they have to get off of and wait for that traffic to move by. $700 right now to fly to Charlotte from Atlanta. It's a 3-hour drive. So what are most people going to do? They're just going to suck it up and drive. Or maybe, I don't know, take a Greyhound. Ugh. And the reason I shudder about Greyhound, it's not because I'm a, anti-bus snob or anything like that. It's just that Greyhound's even worse. They stop at every small little town to pick up more people. That's a 3-hour drive. It's about a 6-7 hour bus ride, I would imagine, because you're stopping at every podunk little town to pick more people up and wait and buy tickets and stop to pee. And it's just not feasible. You're trying to save time. You're trying to make the most of your travel time. And even the flight from Atlanta to Charlotte, again, you got to get to the airport like an hour and a half, 2 hours early. You got to wait through TSA. You wait to load and unload. That shouldn't take, it takes you almost, if not more time to fly from Atlanta to Charlotte than it would to just take the 3-hour drive. Which again, you're just putting more people on the highways. Another lane ought to fix it, only it never does. This is why, in my mind, you had this appetite under the Gold Dome from conservatives outside the city of Atlanta to take over the Atlanta airport. Well, maybe the state should take over MARTA. And maybe the state should realize that connecting the entire state to Atlanta and that airport that they deemed to be so vital, so important, is the way to go. And they'd be right to do so. And a visionary from another party who shows herself to be pro-business and pro-Atlanta and pro-mobility and pro-21st century should lead the call for that state takeover of MARTA, for a push in her former city to embrace Beltline rail so that you can improve mobility in the city of Atlanta and to the city of Atlanta. And by a state takeover of MARTA, you're now bringing MARTA under the fold where it finally gets state funding that it has yet to ever get. Atlanta is the largest mass transit agency in the country not to get a dollar, a dime, a penny of state funding. Again, the margin for error for MARTA has always been razor thin. And those of us who are poor or have been poor and know that you're just one sick day or one, I don't know, fender bender getting to work, missing a few hours, yada, yada, yada. Those missed hours are missed income. That missed income is a bill not getting paid, lights getting cut off, yada, yada, yada. Or, having to pay late fees, which only adds to the problem when it comes to the margin for error. You see where I'm going with this, right? That's why someone has to say from on high, MARTA needs to be taken over by the state. And we need to develop a rail network, like make this a project. By 2050, this is going to be done. We're going to connect Atlanta to the other major cities in the state of Georgia so that people can get to and from the airport, the world's busiest airport, the international hub of the country, and to the rest of the world with ease and without having to worry about the whims of what's happening in the Middle East or what we caused to happen in the Middle East in the case of the current Iran kerfuffle. Thank you, Donald Trump. And that it won't be super expensive to get to Charlotte because we have that rail network that would connect with the rest of the rail network in the rest of the United States. Become what Georgia can be, the example for the rest of the country. And I get it. Florida's got their issues with finances. Stop paying attention to the finances. Nobody pays attention to when GDOT runs over. Nobody pays attention to when there are issues with budget, over budget overages or deadlines missed, for example. Nobody cares. Nobody blinks. It doesn't garner headlines, but it does when MARTA does. Use that to your advantage, Mayor Bottoms, and take over MARTA and call for it soon. A couple of weeks ago, you had the chairman of Cox Enterprises writing an op-ed in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, for which Cox Enterprises owns. Alex Taylor, who wrote, here's the headline, "The future of Atlanta Beltline hangs in the balance. Trains are not the answer." Well, I hate to tell him this, but trains were originally part of the Beltline vision. It, again, is what citizens were enthusiastic about and wanted to fund and expect. I reached out to Ryan Gravel, the then Georgia Tech student, who envisioned the Beltline, who put this into a class project and got great grades for it, by the way, and of course caught a lot of attention of local and regional political officials and movers and shakers in the business community to get feverishly behind the Beltline project. I reached out to him and asked him if he wanted to come on this show. He literally texted me back and he says, "Ron, good to hear from you. I don't get into debates anymore about what the Beltline is, what it was supposed to be, or the viability of transit. At least I try not to get drawn into them. My voice only matters so much, and to turn things around, we need a new generation speaking up for their future. It is heartbreaking to see the direction Atlanta is going, but for my own mental health, I've had to seek work in other places. Anyway, sorry and thanks for the offer." That's the guy who essentially birthed the idea of the Beltline. He is sickened to see how it's falling so short. But to Alex Taylor, the chairman of Cox Enterprises, he thinks it's a jewel right now. I happen to think it's peak Atlanta. And when I say peak Atlanta, I mean that it is a destination. It's like beachfront property in real estate, right? Oh, you live near the Beltline. Ooh. And that's all fine and well. But I'm going to tell you something. There are folks who in New Orleans think it's a romantic idea. Ooh, you get to live in the French Quarter. Yeah, the French Quarter where there is no parking and people are constantly blocking your driveway and people get ticketed for it. Don't get me wrong. New Orleans police does what they can to, alleviate that. But it's a pain in the to live in or near because of the parking problems. And New Orleans doesn't have a whole lot of mass transit, but they do actually have streetcars. They don't have enough of them, especially from other parts of the city to the French Quarter. But the Beltline to me is it's peak Atlanta because it causes gridlock to get to the Beltline. The Beltline was supposed to alleviate the gridlock. Parking is an issue. People are using parking lots not meant for the Beltline, meant for retail or other businesses. They're now having to have the folks that own these businesses and the shopping centers, et cetera, and so on. The city of Atlanta, by the way, owns one of the shopping centers in question along the Beltline on the east side. I know this because I got booted by them once. Not because I was parking there and using the Beltline, but because I parked in a spot that was wide open and wasn't delaying anybody or slowing anybody down. It was just there. We'd all parked along the side of the parking deck before. No big deal, blah, 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 blah. Well, I got booted because they slipped up some signs that says you can't park here anymore. And I did my research. I'm like, well, who owns this property? Like, why? I stepped in to get $25 worth of stuff at Kroger, and I got a $150 bill to get my boot removed. I wanted my money back from Kroger, and Kroger's like, well, we don't own it. They're right. The city of Atlanta does. It's peak Atlanta that you have traffic and parking issues for the destination that is the Beltline that's supposed to improve mobility. And Alex Taylor, the chairman of Cox Enterprises, has the audacity to use his own digital newspaper to opine that the Beltline doesn't need a rail element. He writes, as a business leader of a complex, multi-generational private family business here in Atlanta, I am faced with this question. If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? And he says, one of the many benefits of being private is the ability to plan for the long haul and also to adjust those plans as facts change over time. Atlanta, our hometown and the city that we love, is in the position now. And so often happens, we are at a major inflection moment, not unlike when Billy Payne brought the Olympics to Atlanta, when Ted Turner launched CNN, or when Mayor William Hartsfield cut the ribbon on the airport to the world. Could you imagine that if at any point in those times we had broadened our mass transit, our mobility issues back then? Atlanta would be ready to embrace the World Cup and maybe have a conversation about bringing the Olympics back because we'd have stronger mobility back then. Anyway, back to Alex Taylor, who writes, after 27 years, the Beltline, the most ambitious redevelopment project ever conceived in Atlanta. It was not just a redevelopment project. And that's the thing. People look at it as a redevelopment real estate project. It's more than that. It was designed to be a pro-mobility project. Anyway, he goes, after 27 years, the Beltline, the most ambitious redevelopment project ever conceived in Atlanta or any other major American city, is in sight. No one should understate the incredible accomplishment that is currently coming to fruition all around us, nor the danger we still run of screwing it up. Well, I hate to tell Mr. Taylor this, but the guy who envisioned it says, you've already done that. You're screwing it up. If you don't hop on the rail right now, we're screwing it up. Mayor Andre Dickens, delaying the embracing of rail is screwing it up. The NIMBYs that live along the east side, who live there now, who enjoy what it is, but don't want to see a streetcar occasionally running by, are screwing it up. The businesses that are along the east side now, who enjoy the traffic that comes from it, who are worried about a few months, I don't know, maybe 18 tops, right, of construction delays or, somehow slowing their business. Alex Taylor talks about future and long-term vision, and we've got too many movers and shakers who are along the Beltline now who are thinking about the short-term impact instead of the long-term vision. They're screwing it up. Alex writes, the Beltline is something that could only happen in Atlanta. He's right. Ryan Gravel, a visionary graduate student from Georgia Tech, proposed the idea in 1999 of redeveloping an abandoned train corridor around the city to bring access, opportunity, and much-needed jobs to Atlanta. A few years later, then Mayor Shirley Franklin, showing true leadership, adopted the project and secured funding through the Atlanta Beltline Tax Allocation District. Ray Weeks led the advocacy on behalf of Atlanta Committee for Progress. Cox Enterprises Chairman Emeritus Jim Kennedy funded the construction of the first 2 miles past Ponce City Market, and we were off to the races. Eventually, Trust for Public Land bought and created the parkland that we now know and enjoy. The PATH Foundation established the model for building green, accessible paths across the city and the region, currently used by millions of residents and visitors. And most importantly, of course, it's most importantly to the rich guy, private philanthropy collaborated in ways unseen in any other city, notably the Woodruff Foundation, the James M. Cox Foundation, and the Arthur M. Blank Foundation. Ultimately, donated over $100 million to see it happen. Today, under Clyde Higgs' leadership, the results have exceeded the vision. So far, it has been credited with more than 90,000 jobs and $20 billion in private investment. Does anybody remember Ponce before the Beltline? Suffice it to say, it was not the beautiful family destination it is today. I would tell you, however, a lot of people don't get to it by the Beltline. There is a massive parking deck beside and beneath it. Parking. Peak Atlanta. Costly parking, by the way. You have to pay to park to shop at Ponce City Market. How many malls do you have to pay to park at in this country? He credits the Beltline, by the way, for Old Fourth Ward, Reynoldstown, Krog Street, Inman Park, Edgewood, West End, or Dare Park, all being these destinations now. These are resurgent, up-and-coming destination neighborhoods, making us the envy of the South. But I'm telling you, if the peak Atlanta problem continues to peak, or I don't know when it actually does peak, it will peak and then it will start to decelerate. The Atlanta Beltline is not the San Antonio Riverwalk. It is not the French Quarter in New Orleans. It is not that kind of destination. It is not a tourist destination. And this mindset that it is, or will continue to be this boon for jobs, is foolhardy at best. It is going to succumb to its own successes and excesses if we neglect the rail element that Ryan Gravel envisioned all along. I know this because I live here. I see this. I see where it's an encumbrance. It is too much of an issue to get to and from anything. The idea of going to the Beltline, it's almost... I lived in New Orleans for a little bit. One of my best friends is a longtime resident. He lives in Metairie. And for him, the idea of going to the French Quarter, you got to get in the car, you got to drive down there, you got to circle that part of the city for half an hour, sometimes an hour, just to land the parking spot where you won't get booted or towed or ticketed, to then go enjoy walking along the French Quarter and doing what you will do while in the French Quarter. That's what we're coming to. And not the good part where, like, the Beltline becomes the French Quarter that brings millions to visit Atlanta. There are way many other things that bring people to visit Atlanta. People aren't coming to Atlanta because of the Beltline. People can't get around in Atlanta enough as it is. And the Beltline was supposed to alleviate that and make Atlanta the example, the envy of the world. By the way, this vision Ryan Gravel had because he went to Paris and saw where they did something like this. And oh, by the way, there's a rail element. It only works if there is a mass transit element. And oddly enough, the same people who are anti-rail are the ones that are looking at other options like, how about the little autonomous node vehicles? So you're admitting that the pedestrian-only part of the Beltline isn't answering the mobility question. And because that idea is peak Atlanta, people are still going to have to get in their own car, find a parking space in a nearby parking lot to get to one of those autonomous vehicles to get to a business. That's not taking vehicles off the streets. That's not bettering Atlanta's mobility issues. Beltline rail, strengthening the streetcar network, and a better run MARTA would do that. Atlantans would benefit, and folks would come to Atlanta because they can get around the city a lot more. I hope my audience of one, former Atlanta mayor and current Democratic gubernatorial candidate Keisha Lance Bottoms, listens. 8 a.m., 4 p.m. weekdays on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Show notes as always at RonShowATL.com. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.